Count 31, rape in the second degree by instrumentation. Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the second degree, and punishment is set at 12 years. Count 32, rape in the first degree. Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree, and punishment is set at 30 years. Count 33, sexual battery.
For years, these corrupt cops reigned with impunity, abusing their power and weaving a web of deceit and crime that ensnared the very citizens they swore to serve. Their transgressions knew no bounds. Drug trafficking, extortion, and even cold-blooded murder stained their hands.
Your Honor, please do not send me to prison. I have wronged, but I'm not ruined. I still have a lot of good left in me.
The city trembled beneath their iron grip, cowering in fear, as their dark empire expanded, entangling the innocent in its malevolent clutches. But every empire, no matter how vast, harbors cracks within its foundation, and the sins of these corrupt officers would ultimately catch up to them.
Now at 5:30, it was sentencing day for a police officer who was convicted of attacking a male nurse at Jackson Memorial Hospital. That attack happened back in May of last year. That officer was fired for that incident. He had been with the Miami police force for more than 20 years.
And now he has to pay the price for slamming the nurse to the ground.
But who are these corrupt cops, and what heinous acts did they commit? Let us uncover the truth. David Oliver. The former police chief of Brimfield Township, David Oliver, once known for his blunt and humorous commentary on Facebook about criminals, found himself facing a harsh reality when he became the subject of criminal charges. Charged with multiple misdemeanors including unlawful restraint, attempted theft, simple assault, and unauthorized use of property, Oliver's fall from grace was met with a sense of irony. During his court proceedings, the judge presiding over the case labeled Oliver himself a mope, a term he had used to describe criminals in his colorful Facebook posts. Oliver pleaded no contest to charges such as attempted theft in office and assault, specifically involving Crystal Casterline, a female officer who accused him of harassment. Casterline expressed her disappointment with the plea agreement, highlighting her love for life, her dedication to marathon running, and the joys of being a mother to her little girls. She admitted her naivety in understanding how domestic violence could escalate to such an alarming degree. Casterline detailed allegations of Oliver hugging her, which then escalated to groping, trapping her, and coercing her into dancing with him, pressing her body against his. While Oliver disputed many of the allegations against him, he chose to plead guilty to all charges in an effort to move forward with his life. Throughout the hearing, Oliver's resistance became apparent as he reluctantly entered a no-contest plea. The judge handed down a sentence of 2 years of probation and restitution, effectively putting an end to Oliver's law enforcement career. Michael Dautreau. This is Michael Dautreau, a decorated officer hailed for his dedication and service to the community, found himself engulfed in a tempest of criminal charges, bringing his once promising career to a devastating halt in 2017. Dautreau's ascent through the ranks had been swift, his star ascending as he donned the prestigious title of sergeant in 2011. Admiration and praise followed his every step, for he was seen as a shining example of the honorable law enforcement officer. But alas, his facade of righteousness concealed a dark underbelly, a web of crimes that would soon be unraveled. The federal charges laid bare the truth that Dautreau had long sought to conceal. Attempted obstruction of justice and conspiracy to tamper with witnesses stained his record, marking a staggering betrayal of the law he had sworn to uphold. In a rare moment of candor, Dautreau pleaded guilty, acknowledging the gravity of his transgressions and the breach of trust he had committed. The halls of justice resounded with his admission, a resolute acknowledgement of his violation of both the law and the sacred trust bestowed upon him as a police officer. The gavel fell with a resounding thud, delivering a sentence that reverberated through the courtroom. Dautreau, now clad in a somber green prison jumpsuit, maintained an eerie composure, his stoic facade untouched by the weight of his punishment. The judge, unyielding in the face of pleas for leniency, recognized the seriousness of the crimes committed by Dautreau and the profound breach of public trust by one entrusted with upholding the law. The sentence handed down, a formidable 20 years behind bars, stood as a testament to the severity of Dautreau's offenses and the unforgiving nature of justice. Observers in the courtroom, gripped by anticipation, were left confounded by Dautreau's lack of emotional response. A man condemned for crimes of such magnitude, one might have expected remorse to emanate from his being. a flicker of guilt, or a shred of contrition. Yet, Dautro's countenance remained placid, his demeanor resolute and detached. His refusal to display any signs of remorse or repentance underscored the gravity of his crimes and the unsettling absence of guilt in the face of his sentence. Dautro, in a feeble attempt to salvage what remained of his tarnished reputation, expressed his regret for the pain he had caused, acknowledging the disappointment he had inflicted upon his family and the community he once served. However, skepticism loomed large, casting doubt upon the sincerity of his words. The extremity of his crimes and his steadfast maintenance of innocence throughout the trial left many questioning the authenticity of his apology. Daniel Holtzclaw.
Former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw reacting to his conviction, this is back in 2015, ultimately sentenced to more than...
In the heart of Enid, Oklahoma, a city draped in a cloak of tranquility, a sinister presence lurked within the ranks of its police force. Daniel Holtzclaw, born on a December day in 1986 in the distant shores of Guam, was destined for a life of infamy rather than the glory he once sought on the football field. Eric Holtzclaw, a decorated lieutenant in the Enid Police Department, fathered this wayward son who would come to embody the epitome of betrayal and depravity. Daniel's upbringing, tainted by the seeds of corruption sown within his own home, set the stage for a dark chapter in the annals of law enforcement history. Enid High School bore witness to Daniel's athletic prowess, particularly on the football field where he donned the mantle of a linebacker. It was during a fateful game, shrouded in the cloak of teenage dreams and ambitions, that he etched his name upon the school's records with a remarkable 25 tackles. In that fleeting moment, the world seemed within his grasp, but fate would have a different path in store. Eastern Michigan University beckoned to Daniel, offering the promise of a brighter future. He immersed himself in the study of criminal justice, perhaps seeking redemption for the sins that would soon consume him. In 2010, he emerged from the hallowed halls of academia, clutching a degree, a piece of paper that held not the key to salvation, but the doorway to his descent into darkness. Daniel's aspirations of a career in professional football were soon crushed under the weight of harsh reality. Unsuccessful in his pursuit, he begrudgingly turned his sights toward law enforcement, seeking solace in the badge he would wear. Little did the Oklahoma City Police Department know that their newest recruit would prove to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Within the realm of law enforcement, a sacred trust is bestowed upon those who bear the badge. Yet, Daniel Holtzclaw proved to be anything but a worthy custodian of that trust. The walls of justice crumbled as he was exposed for the unspeakable crimes he had committed against the vulnerable women of Oklahoma City's impoverished corners. Like a predator stalking its prey, Holtzclaw meticulously selected his victims, exploiting their vulnerabilities with a perverse cunning. Background checks were his tool, a twisted compass guiding him toward those with outstanding warrants or tarnished records. It was a calculated scheme, a dance of malevolence orchestrated by a man who once wore the uniform of righteousness.
Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts. You will be remanded to the custody of the Oklahoma County Sheriff for formal sentencing set January 21st, 2016 at 10 o'clock.
As the gavel struck the wood in that solemn courtroom, the tension in the air was palpable. Daniel Holtzclaw, a former police officer now draped in the shackles of his own making, stood as a shattered embodiment of the ruin he had wrought. 18 charges had stained his conscience, and the jury had spoken with an unprecedented verdict, recommending a prison sentence that defied comprehension, an astronomical 263 years. Tears welled up in Holtzclaw's eyes, his body trembling with the weight of his impending fate. In the midst of the courtroom's turmoil, lead detective Kim Davis stood resolute. She had been the guiding force, the unwavering voice for the victims who had suffered at Holtzclaw's hands. Holding the trembling hands of those who had emerged from the abyss of victimhood, she expressed her satisfaction with the sentence, a sentence befitting the magnitude of the crimes committed. Marcus Eberhardt. Marcus Eberhardt, once a police officer entrusted with upholding the law, became the subject of headlines in 2019 when his use of a taser during an arrest led to the death of 38-year-old William Marshall. This fateful event catapulted Eberhardt into the heart of a legal battle, facing charges of involuntary manslaughter and misconduct in office. Prior to the incident, Eberhardt had served as a police officer for several years. While reports indicated no history of disciplinary action, he had garnered a reputation for being a relatively aggressive officer. Marshall, on the other hand, carried a burden of narcotics abuse and a record of non-violent offenses. As the trial unfolded, a stark revelation emerged. Eberhardt's use of the taser on Marshall had exceeded the boundaries set by departmental policy. The prosecution argued vehemently that Eberhardt had employed excessive force, holding him accountable for Marshall's untimely demise. Conversely, the defense maintained that Eberhardt had followed his training, attributing Marshall's death to his history of narcotics use and underlying health conditions. In February 2022, a monumental verdict resonated through the courtroom. Eberhardt stood before the jury, convicted of involuntary manslaughter and misconduct in office, a landmark moment in Michigan's history, marking the first time a police officer had been found guilty of a crime for using a taser. Eberhardt's fate now rested in the hands of the sentencing hearing, scheduled for May 2022. The specter of potential imprisonment loomed, with a maximum sentence of 15 years hanging over his head. As the verdict reverberated through the air, Eberhardt displayed a sense of urgency to leave, his reaction seemingly muted. In contrast, his lawyer expressed disappointment with the decision, grappling with the weight of the outcome. However, fate would deliver an even more resolute blow during the subsequent sentencing hearing, as the judge, recognizing the magnitude of the crime, sentenced Eberhardt to life in prison. In a later statement, Eberhardt sought to convey his remorse for his actions, acknowledging the indelible impact they had upon Marshall's family. He offered heartfelt apologies for the pain he had caused, recognizing that no words or deeds could ever bring back their beloved. Assuming full responsibility for his actions, he expressed his earnest prayers for the family to find solace and closure in the face of unimaginable grief. Daniel Saylor. The journey of Daniel Saylor, the former police chief of Windermere, Florida, took a grave turn, culminating in a sentence that would forever alter the trajectory of his life. From his humble beginnings as a patrol officer in Ohio to his rise as a chief of police in various towns, Saylor's career was marked by years of service and dedication. However, the specter of perjury would cast a dark cloud over his legacy. In 2014, Saylor found himself embroiled in a case that would unravel the foundation of his professional standing. Accused of perjury in a high-profile matter involving a prominent resident of Windermere, the allegations centered on the resident's purported improper expansion of his home. It was during a deposition that Saylor stood accused of lying under oath, a charge that would lead to his subsequent arrest and prosecution. The trial, which took place in 2019, would become the crucible in which Saylor's fate was sealed. Found guilty of perjury, he faced the weight of an 8-year prison sentence. The gravity of the situation was evident in Saylor's visage as he struggled to come to terms with the sentence, requiring assistance to leave the courtroom. In a bid to sway the court towards leniency, he pleaded for a lighter sentence, citing the loss of his job and the tarnishing of his reputation as already significant penalties. His attempts to convince the jury of his innocence were met with resistance as the judge passed down the sentence, leaving Saylor visibly displeased and expressing his confusion and plea for mercy. The weight of his role as a single father and his past service to Florida loomed large, adding further complexity to an already tumultuous moment. In a statement issued through his attorney, Saylor maintained his steadfast stance of innocence while condemning the justice system that had brought him to this point. He claimed to be a victim of unjust targeting by prosecutors, asserting that his conviction was a result of prosecutorial misconduct and the judge's failure to hold the prosecutor accountable. Saylor expressed regret for the toll his convictions had taken on his family, particularly his wife, who had stood by his side throughout the arduous legal proceedings. While acknowledging his fallibility and mistakes, he maintained that he had always acted in good faith as a police officer. Derek Chauvin.
The state brought back.
And then this very sobering moment when Derek Chauvin, former police officer, stands up, puts his hand behind his back, is handcuffed, and is let out.
No reaction from Derek Chauvin throughout most of the...
In the annals of American history, few names resonate with such a potent mixture of rage, grief, and seething controversy as that of Derek Chauvin. This former Minneapolis police officer, whose chilling involvement in the tragic demise of George Floyd ignited a firestorm of nationwide outrage, forever etched his name in the somber annals of police brutality and racial injustice. Chauvin's fateful journey commenced in the Twin Cities area, where he grew up, honing the characteristics that would ultimately define his place in infamy. Park High School in Cottage Grove witnessed his athletic prowess as he took to the football field, embodying the warrior spirit as a player for the school's team. Yet, the shadows that lurked within him soon cast a foreboding pall over his promising future. Normandale Community College became his harbor of knowledge, but it was at Metropolitan State University where he embraced the study of law enforcement, seeking to safeguard a society that would soon tremble under his cold gaze. In 2006, he emerged with a bachelor's degree, a symbolic badge of authority that would pave the path to his ultimate downfall. The Minneapolis Police Department opened its doors to Chauvin in 2001, blissfully unaware of the darkness that lay dormant within their newest recruit. His rise through the ranks was swift, assuming the role of a field training officer in 2008. Yet, beneath the veneer of service and protection, a sinister undercurrent coursed through the veins of his career. A litany of complaints, 18 in total, stained Chauvin's tenure on the force. However, the arms of justice proved feeble, with only 2 resulting in any semblance of disciplinary action. A mosaic of use-of-force incidents painted a disturbing picture, culminating in a fatal encounter in 2017, where Chauvin was among the officers responsible for ending the life of a suspect. But it was on that fateful day, May 25, 2020, that Chauvin etched his name into the collective conscience of a nation. Answering a call regarding a purported counterfeit bill, he, alongside 3 other officers, crossed paths with George Floyd, an unsuspecting 46-year-old black man. Handcuffed and helpless, Floyd found himself prone on the unforgiving asphalt as Chauvin's knee pressed mercilessly upon his neck, compressing his life force for an agonizing 9 minutes and more. Floyd's desperate pleas for breath mingled with the cries of onlookers, a symphony of pain that would forever haunt the depths of America's soul. His final breath escaped him, and he was lost to this world, a symbol of the injustices that continue to plague our society. In a courtroom charged with tension, a jury rendered their verdict, guilty on all 3 charges. Bail became an illusion, a fleeting concept as Chauvin was promptly remanded into custody, his freedom stripped away. On that fateful day, June 25, 2021, the gavel fell, pronouncing a sentence of 22.5 years in prison, albeit with the bitter solace of credit for time served. But Chauvin's journey was far from over. As the specter of federal charges loomed, the echoes of Floyd's violated civil rights resonating through the hallowed halls of justice. A stoic mask adorned Chauvin's countenance as the world watched in anticipation of a shred of remorse, a flicker of humanity. Alas, none was to be found. In a brief moment, he removed his mask, offering token condolences to the Floyd family, yet remaining defiantly silent on the depths of his own culpability. Appeals were filed. Cries of a biased jury and an unfair trial echoed through the chambers of justice, challenging the very fabric of the legal system. Zachary Wester.
This is video from Wester as the verdict was being read. The former Jackson County deputy displayed little emotion as the verdicts were.
Within the heart of Jackson County, Florida, the twisted tale of Zachary Wester unfolded, shattering the very fabric of trust that had once bound the community. Behind the facade of a sheriff's deputy, a dark undercurrent surged, fueling an insatiable addiction to power. This addiction, like a poison coursing through his veins, would manifest in a series of shocking abuses of authority that would leave his colleagues and the entire community in stunned disbelief. Wester's fall from grace was swift and devastating. The seduction of power consumed him, driving him to commit unspeakable acts of misconduct and deception. Multiple charges, each more harrowing than the last, adorned his criminal record. Racketeering, official misconduct, perjury, fabricating evidence, and possession of controlled substances marked the path of destruction he had carved through the lives of innocent victims. On that fateful day, September 7, 2021, the gavel fell, pronouncing a sentence that aimed to reckon with the depths of Wester's transgressions. 12 years in the cold confines of prison awaited him, a resolute punishment that sought to reflect the magnitude of his crimes. The community, ravaged by his actions, grappled with the aftermath, yearning for justice and demanding a system that would hold those in power accountable. The genesis of Wester's criminal spree can be traced back to 2016, a year in which he began to prey upon unsuspecting motorists, planting narcotics upon them during seemingly routine traffic stops. His malevolence remained concealed until a brave driver came forward, shedding light on Wester's sinister actions. An investigation was launched, peeling back the layers of corruption that had festered within his heart for years. The truth emerged, and in 2019, Wester was apprehended, his reign of deceit and abuse abruptly halted. A troubled history tainted Wester's background, providing glimpses into the darkness that would later consume him. Prior termination from another law enforcement agency in Florida, a testament to his failure to meet the very standards expected of him, was a mere precursor to the horrors that would unfold in Jackson County. Yet, even in the face of overwhelming evidence, Wester clung desperately to his tattered veil of innocence. He spun tales of being set up, vehemently denying any involvement in the planting of illegal substances on unsuspecting victims. The Courtroom, a stage set for truth and justice, witnessed his feeble attempts to deflect blame, his arrogant and dismissive attitude casting a sinister shadow over the proceedings. Lies flowed effortlessly from his lips as he claimed the narcotics had been present, but denied personal involvement in their placement. The victims of Wester's crimes, a testament to his abuse of power, stood resolute in the courtroom. Their presence bore witness to the horrors they had endured, their voices seeking solace in the pursuit of justice. Eric DeValcanera. This is Eric DeValcanera, a former police detective, found himself at the center of a storm when he was sentenced to 6 years for the fatal assault of Cameron Lamb in 2019. The incident, a heart-wrenching chain of events, unfolded against the backdrop of a traffic incident in Kansas City. Responding to the scene, DeValcanera and his partner, clad in plain clothes and police department vests, entered the backyard of Lamb's home without a legal warrant. In the midst of this turbulent encounter, Lamb, slowly reversing his pickup truck down a ramp into the basement garage, fell victim to a volley of 4 shots fired by DeValcanera. The officer claimed he saw Lamb reach for a weapon and pointed at his partner, a split-second decision that would forever alter the course of their lives. Tragically, Lamb's life was extinguished at the scene, leaving a void of grief and questions in its wake. The trial that ensued offered a harrowing glimpse into the heart of this fateful encounter. DeValcanera, his voice laden with emotion, narrated the events that unfolded on that ill-fated day, his tears serving as a testament to the weight of the tragedy. In November 2021, a judge, presiding over a bench trial, delivered a verdict that would reverberate through the halls of justice. Guilty on charges of involuntary manslaughter and armed criminal action, DeValcanera was sentenced to 3 years and 6 years respectively, with the sentences to be served concurrently. Following the sentencing, DeValcanera's defense attorneys sought his release during the appeals process. Their plea was granted by Judge James Dale Youngs, who deemed incarceration unnecessary at this stage. DeValcanera, as he heard the sentence pronounced, held his hand at the desk, his visage etched with shock and disbelief. For the grieving family of Cameron Lamb, the verdict provided a measure of closure, albeit tinged with the eternal pain of loss. Lori Bay, Lamb's mother, deemed the decision fair, yet acknowledged that the anguish she bears will not dissipate. Akil Bay, Lamb's stepfather, expressed his hope that the sentence would serve as a catalyst for change within the Kansas City Police Department, urging a reckoning with the systemic issues that continue to plague law enforcement. This incident, like so many others before it, has ignited a firestorm of debate, shedding light on the pervasive issues of police brutality and racial profiling that plague the United States. The disproportionate impact of such violence on Black Americans serves as a grim reminder of the deeply entrenched systemic racism that continues to permeate law enforcement institutions across the country. The justification offered by DeValcanera, claiming to have seen Lamb reach for a gun, has become a focal point of contention. Many assert that this was merely an excuse for excessive force, contending that non-lethal methods should have been employed to subdue Lamb. The fact that Lamb was slowly reversing his truck into a garage suggests that he posed no immediate threat, raising questions about the necessity of resorting to deadly force without exhausting alternative avenues. Aaron Dean. The name Aaron Dean became etched in the annals of American police misconduct in 2019, when his actions forever altered the life of Tatiana Jefferson and ignited a national conversation on police brutality. As a former police officer in Fort Worth, Texas, Dean found himself at the center of a fateful incident that unfolded in the early hours of October 12, 2019. Responding to a non-emergency call for a wellness check on Jefferson's mother's home, Dean arrived at the scene. In a tragic turn of events, he shot and killed the 28-year-old woman who had been staying at the residence and caring for her nephew. The repercussions of that moment reverberated far and wide, laying bare the systemic flaws in law enforcement. Before his tenure in the Fort Worth Police Department, Dean had worked as a detective, ensuring public safety within the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport Department. Throughout his career, he had maintained a clean record, free from disciplinary issues. However, the events that unfolded that night would shatter that facade and expose the violation of several departmental policies, including those regarding the use of force and de-escalation. Following the shooting, Dean resigned from his position with the Fort Worth Police Department. Yet, accountability caught up with him as he was subsequently arrested and charged. In August 2021, a Tarrant County jury delivered a guilty verdict, albeit on the lesser charge. Under Texas law, the offense carried a potential penalty of 2 to 20 years in prison. During the sentencing hearing, held on October 14, 2021, family members of Tatiana Jefferson addressed Dean, expressing the profound grief and loss they had endured. Ashley Carr, Jefferson's sister, eloquently described her as a blossoming flower and spoke on behalf of their mother, who had passed away prior to Dean's conviction. As the judge announced Dean's sentence of 11 years and 10 months in prison, a term longer than typical under Texas law, the former officer showed no visible emotion. Such stoicism may be interpreted in various ways, some seeing it as a lack of remorse or comprehension of the gravity of his actions, while others might argue that Dean sought to maintain composure in an emotionally charged environment. Unraveling the true nature of his demeanor during the sentencing remains an enigma. Dean's sentence of 11 years and 10 months in prison includes the possibility of parole once he has served half of his term. The court proceedings also shed light on his knowledge of police regulations, revealing a troubling lack of understanding and competence that calls into question his suitability for the role of a law enforcement officer. Charlie Reeder.
Your Honor, please do not send me to prison. I have roamed, but I'm not ruined. I still have a lot of good.
In the depths of Pike County, Ohio, a former sheriff found himself entangled in a web of criminal accusations that would forever tarnish the reputation of the office he once held. The weight of 2 counts of theft in office and tampering with evidence bore down upon him, leaving the community in disbelief and seeking answers for the betrayal they had endured. The seeds of suspicion were sown in 2019 when whispers emerged of the sheriff's alleged misdeeds. It was believed that he had siphoned funds from narcotic busts to fuel his insatiable gambling addiction, a sum totaling approximately $5,000. The gravity of the accusations could not be ignored, and the sheriff's attempts to justify his actions by claiming to have used the cash for the benefit of the community fell upon incredulous ears. Readers saw through the veil of deceit, recognizing the hollowness of his excuse in the face of mounting evidence. The trial that followed laid bare the truth that the sheriff had sought to conceal. Charges loomed large, casting a damning shadow over his once pristine reputation. The evidence presented left little room for doubt, revealing that the stolen funds had been used for personal gain. His feeble attempt to mask his tracks by falsely reporting the misappropriated money as community support only served to further erode the faith placed in him by the very citizens he had sworn to protect. Desperate to evade the consequences of his actions, the sheriff took to the stand, his voice choked with emotion. Tears welled in his eyes as he implored the judge for leniency, taking responsibility for his transgressions and acknowledging the irreparable damage inflicted upon the image of the sheriff's office. It was a plea that sought to appeal to the mercy of the court, a last-ditch effort to escape the clutches of imprisonment. However, the judge remained unmoved by the sheriff's emotional speech, armed with a question that struck at the heart of the matter. With unwavering resolve, the judge demanded an explanation for the discrepancy between the denominations of the money the sheriff claimed to have used for community support and those that had been taken from the crime scene or the individuals involved. In that moment, the truth could no longer be denied. The sheriff had plundered the funds for personal gain, and his pitiful attempts at saving face crumbled before the scrutiny of justice. The gavel fell with resolute finality, delivering a sentence that sought to reflect the magnitude of the sheriff's crimes. 6.5 years of prison time awaited him, a stern rebuke for theft in office and tampering with evidence. Yet the counts would run concurrently, and he would only serve 3 years behind bars. As a final blow, the former sheriff would forever be banned from holding any public office in Ohio, the echoes of his betrayal resonating through the halls of power. And that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share it with a friend. Watch this next.